All right, welcome back, everybody. My name is Nicholas Gibbs. This is Investing Against the Grain. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, especially if you like this type of content. I don't record that often anymore, so all the likes help, and the more likes will probably help me come on here more often. So let's get right into it. So Tesla came out with an announcement, really Elon Musk, that really sparked a lot of controversy, a lot of excitement, a lot of hope again into the idea of robotaxis and whatnot into the future. First, let's talk about how all this started, which most of you know by now, so I won't dwell too much on it. In fact, let's just jump right in with this tweet from Sawyer. So Sawyer wrote here, Elon just said that Reuters was lying. However, here's my general thinking. Tesla's low-cost $25,000 car and the Robotaxi were always going to be based on the same platform. They were going to be very similar, but the $25,000 car version was going to have a steering wheel. Okay, so what are we talking about here? If you don't know, Reuters came out with this article essentially saying that Tesla was killing the $25,000 vehicle, essentially the next level down from Model 3, Model Y, right? Taking those cars, cutting them in half and selling that as a vehicle. This would have a steering wheel, this would have pedals, right? All the normal things you would have in a car. And Reuters was essentially putting out there that Tesla has canceled that altogether. And of course, Elon came out right away, said that they're lying, that they don't, know what they're saying. Okay, so we're caught up there. So then Sawyer says maybe Elon and the team have been so impressed with how good FSD 12 has performed, and where we're maybe thinking they should be shifting even more resources to the Robotaxi FSD effort. This doesn't mean the $25,000 car is canceled. Again, they share the same platform. All right, so again, just catching you up, not spending too much time on this because I know most of you know this. In Walter Isaacson's book, we learned that the Robotaxi, the next-gen vehicle, that they're going to be built on the same platform. Long or short, Elon wanted to just build out a Robotaxi, thought a $25,000 vehicle with steering wheel and pedals was stupid, that we would need it. FSD was the future. Franz and other people in the background wanted to hedge their bets on that. And so they proposed to Elon this idea of being able to do both on the same platform, same line, etc. Elon loved it, hence why this is a big controversy right now, at least for a few minutes. Okay, so kind of got you guys caught up on that if you didn't know about any of that. So let's scroll down here. Here we have Meet Kevin. I just, again, imagine most of you know, big YouTuber, big in real estate, big in investments. I'll talk more about Meet Kevin and some controversy that happened later on in this video. We'll talk about the controversy with him, with Ross Gerber. I'll give you my thoughts on it, so stick around for that. Okay, so Meet Kevin says, possibly, but what you've just done is delayed the Model 2 until FSD is 100%. That likely kills 2026 production delivery forecasts on Wall Street. Okay. This is something that I'll get into in a little bit here as well, talking about this debate. If you were on the live stream that we had on Friday evening, it was Alexandra, Tesla Boomer Mama, hosted by Herbert from Brighter with Herbert. We had Jeff Lutz on it. Xander was on it. CERN was on it. Meet Kevin came on it. Farzad was on it. Right as I was getting on, he was getting off. So it was great stream. Highly recommend you go check it out. It's on Herbert's channel. Go watch it. But you could see where there's a lot of friction between me, Kevin, and a lot of us, and him. I very clearly debated and defended what I think most of our positions are, and versus Kevin's. And Kevin, I don't want to. I'll dive into this in a second, but I like Kevin-ish. I'll talk about what I like, what I don't like about Kevin, but what he does so frequently that isn't good, in my opinion, is he'll say something along the lines of, well, if we go back to first principles thinking, well, really what this tells us is that everything has to be 100% or this will never get adopted, right? He tries to talk like that, like he's being empathetic, and he throws out first principles. And the truth is, that's not first principles thinking. it's first principles. You say that, at this point it's been bastardized, but first principles thinking doesn't say that it's that binary has to be perfect or we don't get it, right? First principles thinking would be, what's the data say? There's an inflection point where it is so safe that even if it does kill people, even if it does make mistakes and lives are lost, it's still worth having it out there because the lives that it saves is just so drastically higher. So anyways, let's go back to this tweet. So he says, possibly, but what you've just done is delayed the Model 2 until FSD is 100%. So this is where I don't agree with this because FSD does not need to be 100%. And so I don't think this kills anything. But this is where Sawyer has a beautiful rebuttal where he says, or the 25,000 car, so with pedals, with steer wheel, is so far along in the process that they can now afford, Tesla can now afford to shift more of their resource, more of their efforts towards the Robotaxi part of this platform. This doesn't necessarily mean anything is delayed at all. And we know that that is more likely than not the truth here because of Elon's response, essentially 2 eyes, okay? And then Sawyer says, I'll take that as confirmation. All right, so that, I think, pretty much catches you up to everything that's been going on. As you all know, essentially, Elon, right after that article came out, said that Robotaxi unveil will happen on August 8th, 8/8 of this year. So we got a lot of things to be excited about. We got more to talk about here along those lines. But with what Sawyer was saying and his whole theory about, okay, the $25,000 vehicle with pedals and steering wheel is so far along that the Robotaxi now makes sense to focus on, plus the progress we've seen with FSD, is probably more aligned to the truth of things, which also would justify what Reuters was saying, because if Elon is telling people, hey, I want to take more focus off of Model 2, we're kind of scrapping that for right now, we're focusing on Robotaxis, maybe it's because, okay, well, we've gotten this to 80%, we're still at like 20% of the Robotaxi, we need to bring that up to speed. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. And it could also be that 8/8 is just an aggressive deadline, timeline that he's giving his engineers. That could be it too. We've known Elon to do this. Let me apologize again. I don't know if my internet connection is going to be weird or not. I'm getting some things here, so just bear with me. It tends to straighten out. Anyways, let's go back and let's take this one tweet here from Kathy Woods. And so, Kathy Wood, excuse me. My wife always corrects me. I always say Kathy Woods. But Kathy Wood says, our thoughts exactly, and she tags her ARC team. Okay, so she's also in agreement with what we see here as far as what this means, right? Reuters has historically been wrong about their reporting and what they see, but there does tend to be a kernel of truth in there. And so I think the kernel of truth is that there was something going on where they essentially said, stop focusing on that. Let's focus on the Robotaxi. Let's get that going. So let's, moments later after Elon mentioned that, right, 8/8, we got a tweet from Tesla AI, which Tasha Keeney here retweets. So she says, and it looks like there's a recent inflection point here as well, perhaps due to the free month of FSD trials. So here you can see Tesla AI put out that they hit greater than 1 billion miles driven on FSD, full self-driving. So again, this isn't shadow mode. This isn't autopilot. This is full self-driving alone. Okay, most of you know this. Well, let me add some nuance here in a second. So here we can see the inflection point. She calls it out here as well, right? She's pointing at it, and she's essentially saying, like, look how this, let me see if I can zoom in for you guys. Look how this steepens out, right? And so she's probably right. This probably is, does have to do with FSD 12, and it probably does have to do with the trial. Here, Elon says, won't be long before Tesla exceeds 10 billion miles on FSD. Now, it's very commonplace. I keep hitting my mic. That's how you know it's been a minute since I've been on here. It's long been thought that the real advantage that Tesla has is in their data, okay? And I want to push back on this a little bit. By the way, representing Tesla as always, right? So let me push back on this. Yes, the miles they have are critical. They're very important. But I think people get too caught up on saying that their data lead is so large that nobody else can catch up, as if that is the main differentiator that they have, right? And I don't think it is. Here's why. Because one, there's also the inference computer that's in every single Tesla. Mind you, it's not just one computer, it's actually two computers. So the way it works is that they have a redundant system. So the idea is if one goes out, the other one can pick up. But as of the best knowledge I have, most recent on what we've heard from the Tesla AI days, the way they're running them is in what we would call active mode. So instead of having one being active and the other one's just sitting there not doing anything as backup, they're using them both actively so that they can share compute resources across. Now, God forbid one shits the bed, the other one can pick up and everything's still fine, right? So it's this redundancy in the system. But within that computer that Tesla has designed internally with the chipset with, I forget his name, but it's one of the chip designers that Tesla stole from Apple years and years ago. Pete, is Pete his name? I forget. Anyways, Tesla stole them away. They've designed these chips. They're, I think, on their third generation of this chip. And, you know, Tesla's designing it and building these computers internally, not the chips. They don't have a chip fab, but they're designing them, building them, and they're putting them into every single Tesla out there. This is very difficult. Why do I say this is more important than just data collection? Well, because any company can just put cameras into a car and start gathering data. All right. The hurdle for entry on that is very simple. However, to design a inference computer that is purpose built for video neural networks, to have the proper CPUs and GPUs and inference chips to be able to scale this out, right? That's a lot more than what many of these companies are doing. Even with NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA is a democratized system, chipset, right? They're starting to get into more niche avenues, but even then, they're still going to be more democratized because you don't know what approaches people are going to take, right? So no matter what, NVIDIA is going to be, you know, maybe they're not going to be Walmart. Maybe they want to specialize in genes, right? So maybe NVIDIA is going to specialize in chips for self-driving. Okay, so that's like your gene store, right? That's like just going to a Levi's versus, right? And with the Levi's, there's all kinds of sizes, everything. Versus going to a tailor, having a custom-made gene where you pick out the denim based on, you know, the dimensions of your leg, based on how much you sweat, based on what type of activity you're going to do, all that stuff. That's what Tesla's chip is. It's dedicatedly built to the way that they are going at this approach. So that's, I mean, I can gloss over that, but the importance of that is immense, all right? So that is much more difficult to get that out there at scale, at cost, than it is to just put cameras and capture data. I'm not trying to say that the data part isn't important, and it is, but that's arguably more important. The other things that I think are more important are demonstrated via this flow here. So you can see here Sven built this out, and I think it's a nice, simple way to think about this, okay? So here you got your data center, all right? This is where the larger neural net training will happen before it gets compiled down into a smaller package that can run on the inference computer in the Tesla, okay? So we've got this going on. Then you have an over-the-air update that goes out to the vehicles, all right? And this pushes out, say, 12.3.3, okay? Now, just this part, this over-the-air update, this is yet another moat that Tesla has because for some reason, these other auto manufacturers haven't figured out how to do this. They haven't figured out how to do it in a good way. And while you can say NVIDIA is going to help them with chips, who's going to help them with the over-the-air update? Who's going to help them train the neural nets? It's not going to be NVIDIA. NVIDIA doesn't even have a prowess in this. NVIDIA has a superpower in designing chips and designing the operating system for those chips, right? So the CUDA, if you will, for them. All right, so here's yet another moat. Okay, so then that goes out into the fleet, and 8 cameras, right? So everybody can put cameras in, so that's not that hard to do. It'd be the computer in here that I would say is what's harder to do. It's also harder to go ahead and start putting those cameras into cars, building out a fleet at an aggressive pace. But I would say a company like GM, Ford, or BYD, they could quickly put in, build out a multi-million vehicle fleet with cameras, in a matter of a couple of years. That could be done. So that's why I say this isn't that big of a moat to capture just data, all right? So you got the fleet here. Then as the fleet is running and we're having disengagements and we're getting learnings, then it has to feed back to the data center, okay? So again, this is essentially an over-the-air update, but in reverse, right? So ideally it connects to your Wi-Fi and it can push up a data stream so that we can do it, right? Probably just taking batches of data and we're capturing them and we're storing them. So then they're in the data center. So then this becomes another complicated part, because you need the hardware, you need to have the right chips, you have to know how to cluster all of those servers, all those chips together, right? Like it's not like you just get the computers and then they just work, right? This takes massive cooling, electricity. How are we going to manage? How are we going to manage packaging all of this together? How are we going to go ahead and start training with this? How do we get the most out of it? Right. So that's just the hardware of it. Then there's the automation of data labeling. All right. This is something else that they're going to have to figure out. Right. So I get this video clip. How do I autonomously label it so that the humans aren't doing the input? Right. So there's something called human reinforcement learning. So HRL versus reinforcement learning. And so reinforcement learning is scalable, right? You don't need to have the human in the loops. And by the looks of it, it seems like Tesla has more or less crossed over that threshold to go from human reinforcement learning to just reinforcement learning, right? So this is a pretty big deal. I'm not saying it's 100% human out of the loop, but it seems like that's the way it's headed. But even once it's in there, then you got to figure out, how do I query the data set we have so that we can, talk to our data and pull out the examples we need? And then how do I go ahead and train it? And so let's say that somebody could figure all of this out. What companies still will struggle with is, how do I go ahead and train this in the right direction? Meaning, how do I know I need to take a left in this intersection versus a right? How do I know that I want to use a transformer here? How do I know that I want to use this type of backwards propagation function, right? It's all these things that Tesla's had to learn over time that got them to where they're at. These are the things people are going to have to still figure out and learn. So it's not just about the data collection. It's not just about the hardware. It's not just about the training set. It's not just about having all of the chips and the compute. It's not just about the over-the-air update. It's about all of this, right? And all of these are layers into why this is such a challenge and why other people haven't been able to catch up. And for those of you who say, there's the first mover advantage, but eventually everybody will catch up, I can give you examples where that hasn't been true, right? Nobody still has caught up to Apple's profitability on the iPhone. Nobody's caught up to their services mode. Nobody's caught up to what Google does with search. Despite ChatGPT, despite all these LLMs out there, nobody's caught up to that. YouTube's still pretty much the dominant platform. Nobody's caught up to that. Tesla or SpaceX landing rockets, we haven't even seen anyone attempt this yet, right? So you can see that, it does happen where you have all of these companies that, sure, they're not a monopoly, but they're the dominant force, right? So it's just something worth at least thinking about. So let's come down here real quick and see. Elon did make mention here saying pretty much it has been staggeringly difficult to make generalized self-driving work, requiring all that you describe above and more. The investment in training compute, gigantic data pipelines, and vast video storage will be well over $10 billion cumulative this year. But that is nothing compared to the $250 billion in cars on the road with Tesla-designed AI inference computers being trained by their drivers, right? So this is what I was talking about. This is a huge deal. So essentially what he's saying is, yeah, cool, the data is important. Yeah, you need to have all the chips. Yeah, you need to have the storage to hold all those videos and be able to stream it in and do something interesting with it. But it's even harder once you layer on top of that the fact that we have these inference computers that we've been putting in every single Tesla for such a long time, right? So these are important things to understand as we start to talk about Robotaxi, okay? So Elon mentioned, again, the 8/8 date for a Robotaxi, right? What's it going to look like? Well, we don't really know. We can speculate. This is a drawing that out of Walter Isaacson's book. You can see on the thumbnail, right? There's one with Hans standing next to a prototype. What this does tell me, though, is that they are thinking deeply about a two-seater versus a four-seater versus something else, and it might be multiple different platforms. Don't forget, during the last was it Tesla Investor Day, or maybe it was the last shareholder meeting, I forget. But they had two things under covers. One was next gen vehicle, and then one's what looked like a bus. So maybe that will be a Robotaxi bus of sorts, maybe 6-seater, maybe it's an SUV, who knows. But the point is, they're thinking about this in, again, what I would actually call first principles. So 2-seater is interesting because most Uber drives, most taxi drives tend to be 1 to 2 people. However, I still think you need to have an option for 3 or 4, because what happens of a family of 3? What if it's me, my wife, and our child, right? Where's my child going to sit? Or that means my wife has to go without me, right? And we have to call 2 of these 2-seaters. And that's where I think we as consumers with FSD and our Tesla Ys and 3s and Xs and Ss, that's where we fit into that market. So we don't really compete with each other, right? If it's just one person or 2 people, you're going to call this, this vehicle, for example, right? This 2-seater. And, maybe it's just me going to the airport because I have a work trip in Manhattan, right? I'll just call this. It'll be more cost effective because it's, I'm paying for the seat I'm using, if you will. All right. Now, let's say it's me, my wife, and our kid, and, one of her parents are in town. All right. Well, then we can do a 3YX, whatnot. But then let's say it's even more. Maybe like the whole family's in town for Thanksgiving and we all want to go somewhere and we want to go grab some drinks downtown. Well, that's where we get the 6 to 8 vehicle bus type Robotaxi that shows up to our house. So I think this is a very interesting approach potentially that I'm speaking about here. Now, some of the FUD, or not, maybe FUD's not the wrong word. Some of the opinions of the Meet Kevin, the Ross Gerber, and so I'm going to start talking about this, let's say, debate within the Tesla bull community. Now, listen, I fundamentally do think that Kevin and Ross are bullish on Tesla's stock. I don't think they're bears. I think that they are biased because Ross has his beef with Elon. Ross wants to be on the board. He's not on the board. Ross doesn't like his politics. Ross, frankly, just has a bigger ego and he thinks he tends to be right a lot. I would argue he doesn't tend to be right a lot. Kevin, same kind of thing. He's got his own biases. He's got what he thinks is right. I don't think he gets challenged that often, which is why that live stream was so interesting, because he didn't have any rebuttals to what I was saying. He just wanted to go and pick on Alexandra. So I thought that was interesting. But he, I feel like he hasn't put in the intellectual thought into this, and maybe he has. Maybe it was just there's a lot of people on there. So I would love to talk to him, on a stream one day and just really kind of pick apart things. But one of his things that he was saying is that there's safety issues and regulatory bodies have to approve of this. And, if this becomes a real thing, then it's going to go straight down to 30 cents a mile. And just all these things that were issues. And at one point he even said, it has to be perfect, because if one person dies from this, then it's over. It's going to be just like Cruise. And again, this is where I say it's intellectually dishonest, because Cruise was a different example. Cruise had some nefarious actions, meaning they had an accident. They reported it after a little bit of time. They also reported it in a dishonest way, not telling the whole story. They also misled many people to think that they were operating autonomously. Meanwhile, they actually had operators. I think it was like 2 operators per vehicle. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors on this. Whereas for me, I ride FSD every day. There's no smoke and mirrors there. It's doing the drives, okay? So there's a difference here. But furthermore, Tesla has been very transparent with their safety report. So you can read this if you want, but let me just slide down here and let's take a look at this. So here's kind of your key. So this is Tesla vehicles using autopilot technology. So this includes FSD and regular autopilot. Here's Tesla vehicles not using autopilot, and here's the US average. And what this is miles driven per one accident. Okay, so here we can see now these are trends, right? So don't look at this as a guarantee for every single quarter or whatnot, right? Things fluctuate. But with that said, here you can see that for Q4 of 2023, there's about 500,000 miles. Remember, this is million miles driven before an accident. So this is 1 million. So on average, the United States average 500,000 miles are driven before an accident. All right, you can see this is a pretty consistent number, for the last few years, right? It hasn't really changed here. We go all the way back to 2018. Actually, it was a little lower in 2018, right? So it actually seems like driving's gotten a little better. Now, Tesla vehicles not using autopilot technology, just Tesla drivers. Tesla drivers tend to be safer drivers. You can see it here. You can see in numbers. They're about, call it, maybe a little, it was 2x in this quarter, but, maybe, about 150% better driving. Okay, so not bad. Why is that? Well, it's probably because they're, Teslas are higher price vehicles, so people tend to drive a little safer in them because they spent a lot of money on it. I think people are less risky when it comes to driving your very expensive car. Right? So, there could be all kinds of reasons, but also don't forget that, let's see. While no car can prevent any accidents, we work every day to try and make them much less likely to occur. Active safety features come standard in all Tesla vehicles made after September 24 for added layer of safety beyond physical structure of each car. Because every Tesla is connected, we're able to use okay. So essentially what they're saying here is that Tesla still incorporates their safety, right? Like if a car is coming, it'll use emergency braking. They'll swerve out of the way if they think they're about to have an imminent accident. So there's certain things that Tesla just does because it's just the right thing to do from a safety perspective, and that could be part of why we see these numbers higher than the average U.S. accident rate. So, and it's not all that, right? A lot of it, there's variables, many variables that go into it. But so then when we look at the Tesla vehicles using autopilot technology, this is unequivocal, right? And this is the type of data that Tesla needs to keep FSD out on the road, to keep regulators really in support of what they're doing. So here you can see, just in this last quarter, 500,000 versus 5.5, this is over 10x safer, right? And you can see that this is very consistent. Now, it fluctuates, and this is Q4 2023. And you could also argue a lot of this is highway miles, sure, but so are the miles down here for the United States. And this is why it's nice about doing this over between quarters, because part of the argument before when Tesla was doing this, like, oh, well, most of the FSD miles, most of the autopilot miles are just on highway, so we don't see everything. And it's like, okay, fair argument. But now it incorporates everything, incorporates FSD. And we're seeing, this month, it's very interesting, right? We have 2.2 million people in the United States that can use FSD. So, maybe only half of those are using it. So we already have 400,000 people who are using it. Add another 600,000 for the half. That's 1 million people using it. They've been using it for the past, 2 weeks since we had the month of free trial. And yet we see no reports of anything crazy happening. No major accident, no major, crazy thing happening. So going back to Kevin's and Ross's point about this has to be 100% safe, I don't agree with this. I think first principles thinking would dictate that if the data shows that a vehicle that's autonomous is 10x less likely to get into an accident, let alone kill someone, then we need to go with that moving forward and try to get that to be 20x, 30x, 100x better, right? So we're not going to risk lives just for the perception of safety or because it was a robot that did something. That would not be logical. That wouldn't be a cogent argument. So push back on that. Now, there are other signals that this is getting a lot better, okay? And I would say that it's really listening to Ashok Alaswamy. So here's a tweet from Ashok, and this was on April 1st, so take this with a grain of salt, but he tweeted, "It's the beginning of the end." And here, Tim, who used to work at Tesla, and I believe he works at Meta now. I could be wrong. Let's see. Where does Tim work? Previously, Google. He's at DeepMind now. Okay, so Tim was more of an infrastructure engineer. He was part of trying to set up the 10K NVIDIA clusters. So Tim says here, FSD achieved internally. And the reason this is interesting is because, remember, Elon and Ashok were showing us FSD 12 back, October, August of last year. And they're showing those end-to-end nets, and they were showing us all the progress, and the results were amazing. And they were seeing that about 6 to 7 months before we saw anything. So you could presumably extrapolate that out to where we are now and assume that they see something that we're not going to see for another 6 months, and maybe they're seeing it now. So they probably see more of where the current state is, and we're probably 6 months behind from where they are. Maybe we're 1 month behind. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. I don't know. I'm speculating. But my point is, having Ashok say it's the beginning of the end, despite it being on April Fool's Day, I think it's a really big deal because he tends to be, he's not always out there tweeting. He's not saying things that are provocative. Nothing in any of his talks or speeches have led us to think that he's overly optimistic. In the few talks we have seen of his, he's been more conservative, more hesitant to say a lot. So I think a shock is really good signal for us. So, all right, let's get into the naysayers here. Let's do the naysayers, and then let's talk about Tesla stock, and we can wrap up from there. All right, so let's start with the naysayers. Let's start with our favorite goober, Ross Gerber. All right, let's see if there's anything else interesting down here. All right. He's been, well, let's give context first, actually. Let's talk about where Ross has come. So Ross is, I think, still, at least he claims to still be a Tesla bull. He's, will say things like he's bullish, whatnot. And he'll say things like, no other company can rival Tesla, etc. But Ross has been wow, I can't speak today. Ross has been disconnected from the Tesla community for many reasons. One reason is because he first, and I would say this is really where it started, when Elon bought X, or Twitter at the time, Ross didn't like it. He didn't like it because of political reasons. He thinks that Elon has gone far right. He thinks that Elon's been brainwashed. You, it's hard to know if you're brainwashed. It's hard to know if you're the one that's been psyoped or not. And so that's where I think if you're just sitting there accusing someone else has been drinking some Kool-Aid or have a woke mind virus or been psyoped or whatever it is, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like, well, maybe you're the one, right? If you're going to sit there and point fingers. But nevertheless, he didn't like that Elon bought Twitter, now X, because of a lot of things that Elon was tweeting and posting. Fast forward, Ross wanted to get on the board. Elon and the board pretty much said no. They didn't want Ross on the board. I also think that Ross he's a bit of a narcissist. All right, I don't know if he would agree with this or not. Maybe he would. But he's definitely a narcissist. All right? He's definitely full of himself. He thinks that he knows everything. He's constantly trying to talk about how he's a marketing guy or whatever, all this stuff. Is what it is, right? I don't think it's bad to be a narcissist per se. I think it's only bad when you can't listen to other people's thoughts and opinions and have the opening to admit that you're wrong about something. So that's Ross. That's my opinion of Ross. Take it with what you will. But let's look at his own words. He says, the biggest risk to Tesla FSD adoption is the humans themselves preventing it. When will a car ever drive perfectly on its own? How could FSD never crash with humans operating around it? Will humans accept some level of failure rate with FSD cars? So these are good questions, but I don't think this is a risk. First, he says, when will the cars ever drive perfectly on its own? Doesn't need to be perfect. No one's perfect. People aren't perfect. Nothing's perfect. So that's not going to be the measuring stick. He says, how could FSD never crash with humans operating around it? They won't. People will crash into them, but they've got cameras. They know what's going on. They know who's at fault, right? So as long as the vehicle's not at fault, then it's fine because we can prove that it was the human who's at fault who ran into the car, caused the accident. On the other hand, maybe Beta does do a mistake. Maybe a tire blows out. Maybe a computer goes out. Maybe a camera goes out. Maybe something just glitches out, right? And the vehicle rolls over, causes accident, deaths, and whatnot. Well, that's the whole point of having insurance, right? If it was going to be 100%, then we wouldn't need insurance. So again, I don't think that's a cogent argument. All right. So how could FSD never crash humans around? Okay. Will humans accept some level of failure rate with FSD cars? Yes, of course they will. They already do. All right. FSD is already out there. Autopilot's already out there. And we've seen many cases where there have been an accident and they immediately blame Tesla and their software, only for us to find out that the driver was drunk, that they were using it improperly, or that it was never engaged. We've gone through this over and over. If anything, Tesla knows how to handle this by now. All right. So this tweet, while I do think these are important questions, they're not going to be any limiting factor. All right, here we go. Here's another one from him. When will the government allow FSD robotaxis to operate alongside human drivers? Who is liable for robotaxi accidents? Who will buy and operate robotaxis? Will they even make money if they are mass adopted, transportation becomes a commodity? Okay, again, you would hope that a fund manager like him who was invested heavily in Tesla would already have thought about these questions. So when will the government allow FSD robotaxis to operate alongside human drivers? They already do. Waymo does it. Cruise was doing it. I think Zoox is doing it. And Tesla's out there with FSD. Not robotaxi, I get it, but they're out there. Furthermore, the way the law works is not in the sense of it's not that you by default can't do something and you have to ask permission. It's the other way around. If there's no law for it, you can do it. That's actually how it works. Furthermore, there are certain states like Florida, where I live, that already have passed regulations to allow robotaxis to come here and do their thing. Adding on to that, from a regulatory perspective, the good thing is that this is actually tends to be on a city and state level rather than just a national level, much like the way insurance works. And this benefits Tesla because these companies or these states are gonna fight and rival and not want to get left behind when it comes to this. In fact, I would be shocked if during the 8A announcement that we don't have like a Newsom up on stage and a DeSantis up on stage with Elon talking about where they're going to kick off some pilot testing in different cities. And the reason I say that is because Newsom isn't stupid and he wants the political clout and, the headlines. And he did that when Elon announced Tesla's AI headquarters in California, right? This was less than a year ago now. And Newsom took the opportunity to be there and, say how much we still love Tesla and all this stuff. Now, DeSantis, I could easily see do that as well. It's also very organic. Where I live here in St. Petersburg, Florida, Kathy Woods is headquartered here with ARK Invest. I did it again. Kathy Wood is headquartered here with ARK Invest. So, between Kathy and DeSantis and Elon, right, there seems like there could be a nice little tri-party relationship going on there. All right, let's continue to pick this apart here. Who will buy and operate, or who is liable for robotaxi accidents? This is obvious. It's who's at fault. If the robotaxi screwed up, then it'll be Tesla and their insurance. If someone else did something, well, then it'll be their insurance, right? So it's pretty straightforward. Who will buy and operate robotaxis? Everybody, right? I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. You will have Tesla owning a fleet operating it. You'll probably have companies like Hertz. You'll have individual people doing it. You'll have people like me who want to put my Model Y into the fleet. And even if none of that happens, even if it's just Tesla doing robotaxis and they don't even have a fleet or anything like that, well, then who cares? We're going to be stupid rich, right? So it's irrelevant. I could also see, we know Ford is working on a Skunk's Work project for a robotaxi. Maybe they make their own vehicle, which is fine. We don't really care about the hardware. We care about the software revenue. And so I think that's really what matters here. So again, not an issue here, Ross. All right. Will they even make money if they are mass adopted? Transportation becomes a commodity. Okay. Obviously, they will make money. This will be the biggest TAM in the world. And let me speak real quick about my father-in-law. Before hopping on here, I called him. I gave him a call. He's I will caveat that he's an engineer. He's retired, but he is an engineer, so he probably thinks more along the same lines as I do. And he's also a big budgeter in the way I am. So, caveats aside, I want to speak to someone who's from a different generation who thinks differently, right? Rather than just me and my community and my people, my age, whatever. And I was asking him, what would make him, or asked him if he ever takes Uber. And he said, yeah, maybe like once a year. I'm like, okay, well, what's the situation? He's like, well, when I go to the airport and I don't want to pay for parking there. And I said, okay, well, take parking out of the equation. If there was no parking costs or anything, would you just drive yourself? And he said, yeah, because it'd be much cheaper. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. So cost is the main thing here. And he was saying it costs about $50 to $60 to drive to the airport. And so you could imagine if you layer in parking, that gets expensive. So if it costs $50 to $60 in an Uber to get there, I asked him, okay, well, what if, I said, what if you could take an Uber to get there that was cut in half for the cost and you didn't have to pay for parking and you didn't have to pay for a tip? Would you take that? And he was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And what he referred back to was the depreciation cost of a vehicle, which includes insurance, depreciation, maintenance, fuel, everything, right? And that's about 65 cents a mile, 65 cents a mile. And so I asked him, like, okay, well, is there a certain point here where you would just not have a car? And he not only said yes, if it was like 30 cents, a mile or whatever, if it was more cost effective, not only would he not have a car, but he mentioned that he already has a lot of other friends who are retiring, who are getting rid of a car, not because they're not driving as much, but mainly to save cost. And the interesting thing is, without me even mentioning robotaxis or anything like that, he said to me the problem that he sees is that as that happens, as the price comes down, the demand's going to go up. And so like he got it right away, right? He's like, yeah, I hear you, but if the cost comes down and people start giving up, like there's going to be more people wanting to use it, right? So the TAM's going to grow. I was like, yes, exactly. Right. So it was just interesting to see his perspective on this. And so, yes, clearly Tesla would make money on this. Will others? I don't know. Right. Tesla has everything vertically integrated. They build the cars. They've got the chip manufacturing. They do the PCB boards, the motors, the seats, right? Everything in the vehicle. We know this. All right. Then you layer in the software costs. Well, guess what? It costs them nothing. Then you layer in energy costs. Well, guess what? They own all the charging stations. No issue there. The insurance costs. Guess what? They have an insurance arm. Excuse me. Right? So you can just keep going down the list here, and you start to realize that Tesla doesn't have all these extra different parts of the business that take away margin from them. So it will definitely be a very profitable business. All right. Let's continue here. We all know that FSD is far from level 3 at this point, so Tesla is betting the technology and the regulators will allow robotaxis on the road while potentially being under a different anti-EV tech administration within the next 4 years. This is me, like you can see he did all this like within minutes apart. So I feel like he's getting a little unhinged here. He's realizing he's out of Tesla stock. And I think he regrets it, especially as all this is happening. He was part of the community. I think that's what's happening here, because I don't think we're far from level 3. In fact, I would say we're beyond level 3. All right. Honestly, I don't think I have to be in my car to go from point to point. Right. Tesla has shut off certain functionalities. Right. Like there's no app where I can just call and send home or whatever. But it's literally going point to point. All I'm doing is putting in the address and hitting drive, and then getting out or finding a parking spot. But even then, if I didn't have to find a parking spot, it could literally, if I could just send it back home, I would, or send it to find a parking spot, like I would. So I think it's definitely beyond level 3. My own personal opinion. In my own area where I live, I haven't tested this everywhere. I'm just anecdotally telling you about where I live and what I'm experiencing with my wife. All right, so let's see. What else we got here? He says, wow, potentially being under a different... So he worries about Trump. Again, I think this is silly to worry about this. If anything, Biden's been extremely against Elon, whatnot. Trump, at least, and I'm not like saying one's, that I'm going for one or the other. Personally, I don't like to talk about that stuff on YouTube. But you can make the argument that Biden has been very anti-Elon, and Trump has said that Elon's one of our greatest entrepreneurs and we need to protect him. So, this could go either way. And I don't think that Trump's against EVs, and he's even said that. He's just said that he doesn't think we should be mandating anything. And honestly, I think that could be healthy for Tesla, because this mandating of EVs and people feeling like their tax money is going towards something that maybe they don't want to pay for, I think that can be a detractor to a lot of people. I'm still of the opinion that we didn't need the IRA tax credit. I think we need to focus on our health as an economy, but that's for a discussion on another day. All right, let's just jam through these last two, and then we're going to talk about Meet Kevin. All right. Certainly, the information that came out haphazardly on Friday is consequential in the Tesla story. We are trying to understand how and when Tesla will make the transition from selling EVs to selling robots and robot cars. Not sure what the financial side looks like. This wasn't haphazardly. Clearly, something got leaked out. Clearly, it was already a timeline and a plan. So I don't know what he's trying to say here. So that's it. All right. let's go over to meet Kevin. Okay, before I dive into this, listen, I actually like meet Kevin. I don't agree with a lot of things he says. I think he's a little bit soft as a guy. Personally, we're just cut from different cloths. But I think he's a good guy in general. And to be honest, I love seeing all of his morning reports. I like seeing his breakdown of the economy. I think he does a really good job. In fact, I would argue he does a better job than anyone I see on CNBC. I think his deeper analysis, I think he's more spot on with a lot of this stuff. I don't think he's great at, talking Tesla anymore. I think he has gone too much towards a trading type mentality when it comes to Tesla, and he's trying to game the system here and there. He's had a couple decent wins, but I think a lot of this is starting to backfire on him. But anyways, just my take. So I do in general like his macro perspective. It's just the micro on certain stocks that I don't agree with. But I think if you want a good macro outlook and a breakdown of SEP, CPI, housing numbers, all that stuff, honestly, I don't think there are many people better than Kevin out there. So give the man his flowers on that. Now, if he watches this, doubt he would make it this far in. I'm sure he would say my comment about him being kind of a soft guy compared to me and my friends, he probably wouldn't like that, and so he'd probably ignore it, but it's just what it is, right? Some of us have a little more sugar in our tank. All right, but let's see. So here he writes, Elon Musk today denied rumors that the Model 2 is canceled at Tesla. A Model 2, $25,000 low price vehicle, is critical for 1, competing with China, agreed. 2, expanding to a mass market, agreed, and expanding Elon Musk's vision for a sustainable future. It is priced into 2026. Maybe. Let's see. Into the 2026 projections by most major analysts on Wall Street, and is therefore critical for the stability of Tesla, its ability to attract talent, funding, incentives. Understandably, this was emotional. I'm deeply excited for the M2. First of all, M2. All right, we got to stop saying that. Okay, here we go. This is where I tend to butt heads with someone like Kevin and someone like Ross Gerber. I think these people who want to tell Elon what he should be doing are wrong. Telling someone what they should do and what the right course of action for them to be going about their day-to-day or how they run their business, when they don't have the totality of information to make a reasonable, logical point of view, suggestion, whatever, is just lacks all reason. And so I think it's comical when I hear people telling Elon what he needs to be doing. With that said, he says Elon Musk should immediately, 1, clarify why the rumor was started. I disagree. I wouldn't feed into this. 2, verify the Model 2 is still planned. 1, there's nothing called a Model 2. And 2, he did say that. 3, verify the Model 3 is still on track for the end of 2025. Well, again, I would not say that. I would not do anything like that because you could Osborne yourself. And if you don't know, the Osborne effect is essentially saying, hey, I'm going to come out with this vehicle on this date. And so everybody else holds off on their purchases until they get that because it's going to be a cheaper vehicle, newer vehicle, whatever. You don't want to do that. You want to wait until the last minute to announce it. And I think that's what they're doing. So again, bad ideas, in my opinion. He goes on to say, otherwise, markets likely begin pricing in the non-zero chance that something has fundamentally changed to the downside. If the Model 2 is being delayed for robotaxis, EPS recognition for the M2 will be delayed until robotaxi is closer to a reality. While 12.3.3 is great, it is not robotaxi. Robotaxi may be 6 years away or more. Based on what? What are you making this assessment based off of? Because we've come to where we are now in a matter of 3 years. So where's your 6 year coming from? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is, you throw in reverse, you throw in a little bit more finesse, like we're at Robotaxi. Like, all you really need to do is make an app for me, at least in my city. If the Model 2 is expected to be released as intended, say so. So far, Elon Musk replies are: one, eyes. Speculation that Model 2 will be the Robotaxi, fine, but that doesn't clarify delay potential. Disagree. Reuters is lying. Okay. Clarity would solve. Okay. So again, he wants clarity on this, but then again, you can see that he goes right into politics. Instead, we get Ben Shapiro commentary, Biden commentary, border commentary, burger commentary. Something about bees today. Like, okay, he's not saying what you want him to say. He's not talking about things you want, and you want assurance. Why don't you just do your own homework, right? Like, I get it. We all want this. We would all love to know what the roadmap is. We would all love to know what's going on. We would all love to know hard dates. But they're inventing things that haven't been done, that are brand new, that are revolutionizing everything, and they can't give hard dates. Because you know what happens when he gives a hard date or an estimation or an approximation? People like you use it against him. Oh, the 4680 is not going according to plan. Oh, we said we're going to have Robotaxis all these other years. Oh, we said whatever in India. Oh, Giga Mexico hasn't started. Like, this is what happens. So the guy's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. So in my opinion, he should just not do any of it, right? What's the point? And competitively, it doesn't make sense to put your playbook out there. It doesn't make sense. If you want to know our playbook, then pull Bill Belichick and try and sneak around and figure out what our plays are. But I'm not just going to put it out there for you to know what my moves are and what's happening next, right? So, because we see all these other automakers, mainly in China, but all of them are analyzing every little thing that Tesla does, and they're trying to reverse engineer it, and they're starting to implement to what they're doing. As a shareholder, keep your lips shut, Elon. You guys do what you do. I trust in you guys. The company is strong. That's what I'm worried about. All right. Last thing, and let's go into talk about the stock. So again, I mentioned before that we have this, what could be like a SUV or a van type Robotaxi potentially. And then over here on the right, we see, what will be the Robotaxi next gen vehicle. So like I was saying before, I could see where this one right here is a 2-seater. And this 2-seater does, the majority of rides. This over here would be great for like if the whole family's in town or whatnot. And then the Model X, that fills in the rest of the gap for the rest of us. So that's how I see it. All right, let's talk about Tesla stock, and then we'll wrap up here. I know we're coming up on an hour. All right, Tesla stock. Cern Basher towards the end of our live stream, where we talked about everything going on with Tesla here, he said something that I think really resonated with me and that I don't think gets said enough. He mentioned that he's been a financial planner, financial analyst. He's been in finance and advising people. Maybe he said a wealth manager. And anyways, for 30 plus years. And what he said is that absolutely what nobody can do, what everybody will be wrong about, is talking about what the stock's going to do, why it did what it did, when it's going to get to a certain price, all that. He says everybody fails at it. What you can do is understand the company. And that's what people need to do. Understand the company you're invested in. Are they doing the right things? Are they cash flow positive? Do they have low debt? Are they innovating? Are they leader in their segment, right? Are they continuing to innovate? Is there issues fundamentally internally? Are they attracting talent? Understand the company. Understand the direction. Understand the mission. Everything stock related, you can't do anything, right? Eventually, the stock will catch up with the company if it's doing good. But we've seen this time and time again. We've seen it with Apple. We've seen it with Amazon. We've seen it with Meta, now Facebook. We've seen it with Tesla. We've seen it with all these companies, right? Tech, non-tech, we've seen it. You've seen it with Chipotle, right? You've seen it over and over. Look at the company. You're invested in the company, okay? You're not invested in the stock price, or at least you shouldn't be. So with that said, I am in a place where I think we are at a special moment. None of this is financial advice, but I think we're at a moment where we are going to spring up sooner than later. I think within the next 1 to 2 years, we are going to see Tesla stock explode to the upside. What do I mean by that? I mean anywhere from $400 a share to $1,000 a share. I see happening in the next 1 to 2 years. And this will be on the backs of FSD, Robotaxi, Progress and Optimus, interest rates coming down, preferably an administration, whether it's Biden, Trump, or RFK, being more friendly towards Elon, seeing a better model of what a Robotaxi platform could look like, seeing, the economy start to recover, people feeling more wealthy, right? All that coming to the system. I think we're going to see an explosion when it comes to Tesla stock, especially when it comes to AI. Right now, there's lots of money being pumped into AI. The one thing I would challenge you to do, and I've been saying this over and over, and it seems like nobody wants, people gloss over when I say this. All right, I've said this so many times. Tell me another company working on a project that's AI related that isn't LLM based, that doesn't cost them money really because owners are paying for it, that they have the compute, that they're profitable as it is, that they have no debt, and that, again, they're already generating revenue from it. I mean, hell, just an LLM. Name me another company that's doing that, right? There isn't. That's my whole point. And LLMs are like this big compared to the enormous AI project that Tesla's working on. An LLM can't hold a candle to what they're doing. What Tesla's doing is real AI. What LLMs are, it's just a transformer. That's all it is. It's a text in, text out. It's incredible what's happened. It's been able to be given out to millions and millions and billions potentially of people out there where they can see the power of this. It's going to create a lot of productivity, a lot of efficiency within companies, but it's not a full stack AI model. It's not the equivalent of what Tesla's doing, but people think it is. This right here, this is probably the most important part of this whole video. An LLM versus what Tesla's doing, they're not the same thing. LLM is like gimmicky AI. FSD, humanoids, real AI, that's going to be what leads us to AGI. Not some scraping of the internet for training, text in, text out. No. How about raw photons in, controls, action, decision, inference out? How about a humanoid? Raw photons in, deciding what to do in a certain scenario based on what it sees and its understanding contextually of what's going on in the world, making a decision. That is the holy grail from an investment perspective. And there's only one company out there. Tell me another one. I would love to know so I can invest in it. All right. We're going to leave it there. I hope this was a good hour for all of you on a Sunday. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you want to see more of me. If you do, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, especially if you stuck to the end. I plan on being with Randy Kurt on Tuesday. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot about this. And I'll be joining Herbert, with Herbert later on in this week, I anticipate. So if you want to see more of me, you'll see me there. And then I'll try to do another video next Sunday. All right. Appreciate all of you. Cheers.